So I don't know if you guys know this about me, but I'm kind of a fan of tube amps. I can see the look on your face now. You're surprised. And I would say pretty much the only thing on this earth that I enjoy more than tube amps, at least that I can talk about without getting demonetized, is pizza. That should tell you how much I love tube amps. So when Sweetwater hit me up and asked me if I wanted to check out the Line 6 HX Stomp, you for real? Come on. Me?
Digital.
As I was typing out an extremely long and super necessary expletive-filled reply to them, a memory occurred to me that hadn't previously. My friends in Earth Crisis fly around the world using these things, plugged into Quilter power amps. And they are a legendary straight-edge hardcore band. So me, the guitarist of a not so legendary straight-edge hardcore band, should probably take that to heart and give them a try. So today, we're gonna check out the Line 6 HX Stomp. Let's do it. Alright guys, hope you're doing great out there today. If this is your first time here at my channel, my name is Kyle. What I do is I take all sorts of awesome, high gain related guitar equipment. I record it with a simple, sometimes SM57 only setup. Yeah, we'll leave it at that. And I give you the unprocessed audio on your end. So if you're into E-standard thrash riffs, drop C hardcore riffs, and dudes that constantly have to name drop in order to make themselves feel important, you're in the right place. Consider hitting the like button and subscribing on your way out so you don't miss any more of my stuff. Thanks! Alright guys, so this video today is a very, very long time in the making. Pretty early on in my channel, I actually got the opportunity to work directly with Line 6, and they sent me a Helix on loan in order to check out with you guys here on the channel, and I was actually really shocked at how much I liked it. And that was really my first foray into modern modelers, the first one that I really got my hands on that I actually spent enough time with it in order to figure it out and be able to form some sort of a valid opinion on it, because the ones that I had tried before that, I just got super impatient and annoyed at the user interface and got rid of it pretty much immediately. So in the comment section of that video from years ago now at this point, a lot of you guys asked me if I had checked out the HX Stomp. I did not know this at the time, but the HX Stomp was essentially the same modeling all built into a smaller platform. So when I did finally jump in and do that research and figure out that the HX Stomp was actually basically mini Helix modeling in a really small and affordable box, I actually got really excited about it. So I kind of have kept my eyes open for one for a long time, and it just so happened that Sweetwater was actually looking for some people to demo these. So I hopped right on that gravy train. So with that being said, I am very excited about this video today, honestly, but I do have to let you guys know this is a sponsored video. Sweetwater is paying me in order to share the Line 6 HX Stomp with you guys here on the channel. So feel free to take everything that I have to say with a grain of salt. You're more than fair to do so, but just know I'm gonna give you my honest thoughts and opinions, as I always do. Keep that in mind. All right, guys, so let's jump into the Line 6 HX Stomp a little bit. That intro clip I was playing is a preset that I made. I set this up specifically to play through the power amp section of the EVH 5153 6L6 Stealth here. And the reason that I'm telling you that is I actually set up a couple different presets for a couple different situations. A few were set up using the tube power amp of the EVH. A few of them were set up using the Quilter Tone Block 202. And then finally, I have some that were set up with cab models to go directly into the interface. I really wanted to dive in and kind of get down and dirty with this thing. Don't take that out of context. And really see what it could do in a bunch of different scenarios, because I recently, over the past couple of years, have gotten the opportunity to try a bunch of different modelers, and I found that most of them are really good these days. So considering that the HX Stomp comes in at $699 brand new retail, there are a considerable amount of other modelers out there that are priced substantially lower than this. So does it warrant its price tag is one of the things that I wanted to find out. And I gotta say, honestly, I'm not even scratching the surface of what this unit is capable of, but I can say, yeah, from my brief experience with it, making some presets in the last couple of days, watching some videos, figuring out the routing and everything, this thing is capable of just an insane amount of stuff for such a compact unit. This really is no bigger than a lot of single pedals that some people will put on their pedal board, yet the functionality is insane. Not only do you get the amp and the cab modeling inside of this, so you can essentially make an entire rig if you want, but you also have the option to run this 4-cable method with your amplifier, which is actually something that Adam, my guitarist in Human Animal, does. He runs a whole bunch of effects through his dual rectifier using the HX Stomp. He used to have a bunch of individual pedals, but he was like, I'm just gonna get a Stomp and put that on my pedal board and create a couple of presets. And he did that and never looked back. He's been super happy with it ever since. So that already was a good signal to me, because how do I put this nicely? Adam is kind of a gear snob. So then I think most people are gonna get what they wanna get out of it. So on top of that, you've got the headphone output, which is nice, jam along with it without your fiance wanting to stab you repeatedly with an ice pick in your sleep. And there's also MIDI functionality. There are multiple ins and outs. So if you wanna route this thing into a power amp, but also route it to the front of house, you can do just that. I mean, there's tons of stuff, guys. I'm not really the person who goes over all the crazy features with stuff like this. I am the person that finds the tones. So we're gonna start off, like I said, on the EVH 5150 6L6 power section. We are going into my Mesa cabinet with the 1999 vintage 30s. This is the traditional cab. We've got an SM57 direct on that V30 going into my interface. There will be no post-processing on any of the sounds that you guys hear. So I'm gonna jump into a couple of the presets I made. The first one, the one that you guys heard, is a JMP 2203. And I actually think that this JMP 2203 is more accurate than a lot of the other ones that I've heard on other modelers. One thing that people really tend to get wrong, or one thing that companies that are made of people tend to get wrong about the 2203 or any sort of JMP circuit is the models always seem to have too much gain. Like if you're familiar with JMPs, the 2203, 2204, not even remotely a high gain amp. Like you really have to work at it to get saturation out of those amplifiers. But the one that's built into the HX Stomp, not high gain at all. In fact, that gain that you guys heard is actually pretty dry compared to a lot of other high gain tones that I dial in. And we are boosting the hell out of it, because we are actually hitting it with not only an 808 screamer, but we're hitting it with a 10-band graphic EQ as well. And as you guys can see, I am dramatically reducing the low end frequencies. And as we go over to the level, I'm boosting the level like crazy. So not only are we hitting it with a tube screamer with gain and level turned up in order to get some more saturation out of it, but we're hitting it with a 10-band graphic EQ and really, really pushing the level. This is what I have to do in order to get my JMP anywhere near something that I would call high gain in real life. So the fact that I have set not only the pedals up the same way that I would set them up in real life, but the amplifier as well, I think that's always a good sign. And another good sign is the drive on this. When you turn it all the way up to 10, it doesn't just increase the drive. It actually increases the thickness and the fullness, and it actually gets dark and kind of tubby, much like something like a real 2203 would. So here we have the drive at 6.7. What happens if I turn it all the way up? So yeah, it gets really dark, really congested, and it starts to get really tubby as well. So that's what a real JMP 2203 would do. And that just tells me right away that they have modeled these things correctly. So yeah, I was really impressed with the JMP model. So on top of the amp and the pedals boosting it out front, I've also got a 10-band graphic EQ that is just kind of playing around with some of the frequencies. One thing I have noticed pretty much across the board on this unit is that in order to get the true top end like bite and sizzle out of this thing like you would get out of the real tube amplifiers, you do have to kind of boost some of the frequencies in the 7 to 8K range. And I have done that on pretty much all of these with a parametric EQ. So as you can see, yeah, 3 dB of 7K. We've got a 1.5 Q on that parametric EQ. So I am doing a little bit of work to get these a little bit closer to how I feel like they would sound in real life. Let's actually go back to my very first preset here, which is a rectifier, but this is a rectifier preamp only because you have the option, if you go into these presets, to go in and we can choose the preamps only of pretty much all the amplifiers that Line 6 has modeled in the Helix and the HX Stomp, and therefore we can kind of shape it around whatever power amp that we are using, and that just kind of gives us even more different tonal options, which I actually think is really cool. So the first couple are preamp only. The second couple that I've made are the amplifiers themselves, and then finally we'll get into the ones with the cabinets. So here is my rectifier preset. Remember, this is just the preamp. That sounds like a pretty good rectifier tone to me. It is fat, it is thick, but I've also done what I would do in real life, which is, again, go over. I added a 10-band graphic EQ, I boosted it in front a little bit, I kind of cut down some of those low-end frequencies, and that is how I treat my real rectifiers in order to get the tightness and the punchiness that I want out of them, and then that way I don't have to crank the preamp gain on the amplifier and introduce the mud that comes with cranking the preamp gain on the rectifier. So yeah, we've got the 10-band graphic EQ. I've also got a Scream 808 in here, but I actually want to go into this and change this out for a different drive. The Kinky Boost is actually a BB preamp style overdrive, and this is going to have more level. So we're actually going to go in, and there are actually some licensed products inside the HX Stomp, if you guys didn't know that. So Horizon Devices has a couple of things in here, one of them being the Horizon Drive, which I think a lot of people are going to be excited about because I know a lot of you guys really like this pedal. So we're gonna dial it as if we were dialing in an actual boost out in front of the amp. I notice an instant difference in the character. It's got that quack that I don't really like about this pedal, that very modern upper mid-range, and that's with the attack on too. If we want to dial the attack up and the bright up, we can make it even more so. So Horizon Devices Precision Drive sounds basically exactly on here, acts on the HX Stomp as it would in real life, so they've done a great job in modeling that pedal. The valve driver is a BB preamp style overdrive, if I'm not mistaken. So I really like BB preamp style overdrives because we can get it nice and tight, but still keep our mid bump. Let's go ahead, let's boost that level. Yeah, it really does seem to impart the same voicing that my BB preamp pedal does, and that's a drive that I love using with rectifiers. So now again, this is just a model of the rectifier preamp. The power amp is responsible for a lot of the voicing on the rectifier because Mesa power amps are voiced quite differently than a lot of other amplifiers, so keep that in mind. But the next one I actually think is really cool. This is my Mark IV preset. So I really think that they did an awesome job on this particular model because there is a certain like growl in the mids that the Mark IV has that the other Marks don't have, at least in my experience, owning most of them. And they have nailed that in this model. It's got that guttural growl to it. It's very, very tight on the front end if you dial it in the right way. As you can see, I actually don't even have my tube screamer enabled on this because much like the real amp, I don't like tube screamers or boosts in front of the Mark IV. That's one of the few amps I like plugging directly into. And then here on the 10-band graphic EQ, I've done nothing. So the 10-band graphic EQ isn't even in this at all. So essentially, all that we've really done is just used the preamp of the Kali 4 lead or the Mark IV lead channel, and I have this dialed in exactly like I would the real amp. You guys know the Mark Series amps, very, very hard to figure out. There are some things that most people don't know about those amps in order to dial them in, like the bass having to be at 0 because that tightens them up, the mids having to be at 0 because that, again, kind of leads to the tightness. The mids can kind of get kind of broad and messy and just kind of like nasally sounding if you turn them up. And then the treble basically dimed because that lets most of the signal through on the preamp, and that also tightens things up. So these settings that you would never apply to normal amps are what you need on the Mark IV, and guess what? They do the same thing on this model. So again, they have modeled an amp that has a very peculiar way of being dialed in correctly. I think that's super cool. I think they nailed that one. We already did the JMP 2203, so now we're in the 5150. So this is a preset that I actually set up around the Quilter. But real quick, I'm gonna play it through the EVH power section and then we'll switch over to the Quilter and you guys can see how the power section or whatever you're using to amplify the HX Stomp makes a pretty substantial difference. All right, now let's move it over to the Quilter. All right, so as you can see, it is a little bit more balanced on the Quilter. The Quilter is a good bit darker than the power section of the EVH. So because I dialed this in, the 5150 preset on the Quilter, it's a lot more balanced. It's not as bright. It's not as tubby on the low end. So I will say that I don't really think that the 5150 model seems all that close to the actual amplifier, in my opinion. As somebody who's like really intimately familiar with the 5150, probably too intimate, I'm just not really getting, like, especially in the mids are where I'm not really kind of getting that 5150 vibe, and it is kind of thick in the low end, a little hollow in the low mids like the regular 5150, but yeah, this model, though it sounds good, in my opinion, I think it's a good sounding model, doesn't really nail the 5150 thing. So let's move on to the next preset, which is the fireballs. So this is the angle fireball. All right, so one thing that I notice about the Quilter overall is it is a little darker on the top end. It doesn't quite provide that sizzle that you're used to with something like the EVH tube power section that gives you a presence control and actually allows you to adjust that presence. But what the HX Stomp does give you is a global EQ. And we want to start dialing up that top end to compensate for the lack of top end on the Quilter. All right, so we have successfully gained some of our sizzle back. Let's actually move to the low frequency and see if we can't pick up a little bit more low end beef. So because we have that global EQ engaged, this will now be in place on all of the presets that we use, so keep that in mind. Let's go ahead and let's go on to our next preset. I believe I have one more that I made for the Quilter, which is the SLO. So that actually does give me SLO vibes, and I will say that this one definitely doesn't have that like harmonic richness in the saturation that's going on an SLO, but does it give you that general vibe? For sure it does. So yeah, my conclusion on using the HX Stomp, setting up a good preset to go with a Quilter tone block in order to have an extremely portable, high-powered rig, are good. I don't really know what I was building towards there. I like it. So now let's check this out as if we were going to use it for recording. Okay guys, so now we are going directly into my interface. So on our preset here, again, I've got a 10-band graphic EQ, I've got an 808 screamer, I've got my amp model, which is the Placator Dirty, aka the Friedman Brown Eye is what the actual model is supposed to be. And then I have my cabinet, a 4x12 Blackback 30, which I think is really, really cool. Blackbacks, of course, being the super old greenback Celestion speakers, and they sound really, really good. So the fact that you get some cool impulse or some cool cab models in this thing is awesome as well. And then finally, I do have yet again another parametric EQ to kind of shape things up a little bit more. So here is the tone that I currently have. So if you guys are familiar with a Friedman at all, this very much has the Friedman voicing. So much, in fact, that I actually had to add a parametric EQ after the fact to fix what I generally don't like about the Brown Eye. I added in a little bit of low end on the parametric EQ, and then in the mids, I actually added a mid spike around 3.6 to give it a little bit more upper mid aggression like you would find with a Marshall, and then I added a little top end sizzle with it. If I were to turn this off, it's a pretty noticeable difference. So as you can see, smooths it out a lot, and it sounds very much like the BE setting on the Friedman. One thing that I haven't told you guys so far is that you actually don't have to use a block on your preset in order to get a gate. The gate is actually built right into the input, and I've had it on all of the other presets, but just to show you guys, because I didn't have it on here, I'm going in, I'm turning it on, and then you can adjust the threshold and decay much like you would with pretty much any other gate. And another thing that I wanted to touch on is some of these amps have really, really unique things as far as like switches and tone controls and stuff. But yeah, I just think that it's really cool that they took the time to actually model those switches and how they react with the amplifier, because again, a lot of the other modelers don't do that. Now, let's actually go into the cab model as well, because one thing that really made me want to check out the HX Stomp even more, Line 6 did a massive update to their cab models, which when I tried the Helix, I thought that the cab models were kind of the weakest part about it. They just didn't sound all that great, but I can say that I totally think that they have improved the cab models, because now I'm finding a bunch of them that I liked, whereas before I couldn't really find any that I felt sounded all that good. So the hell did I just say? The update made a huge impact is what I think I was going for. But yeah, let's actually dive in. So we have different mics that we can switch through. Of course, I was on the 57 because belligerent amateur. But we can start flipping through. We've got a 409 dynamic. Big difference right off the bat. We've got stuff in here like Neumann 87s, which is super cool. 414 condenser mic. These are expensive microphones that you get access to through the modeling. If you go into the cab selection, there are single and then there are dual cabs. So with the dual cab, you can go in here. I haven't messed with this yet, so I'm kind of curious to see exactly how this works. Let's pair it with I'm gonna stop talking, good Lord. All right, so let's go with a Greenback 25. Let's go in, let's change. Okay, yeah, so it's giving us control over the second one. So let's go back in, let's add that blackback cab again. Let's go back to our Greenback 25 cab. We've got a 57 on that one, and then let's go over to our Blackback 30, and let's get that Neumann 87 mic, or 67. I like the 67 a lot. So yeah, again, you don't even have to create a splitter and split your signal chain and use an extra block in order to get a second impulse response. And yeah, dude, I'm a fan. This thing is fun. Seriously, I'm having a lot of fun with this. So, all right, last but not least, let's go into our Rev Red. I also think that they nailed the rev stuff, and this is one of the better sounding presets on the unit. One thing though, I still have my global EQ on, so let's actually see how different it sounds if I turn the global EQ off. So it's a lot smoother, not quite as thick. Turn it back on. So again, super nice to have the global EQ to apply across multiple presets. Let's actually do the Line 6 Badonk is really, really popular in the high gain community. People say that this amp model sounds really, really good. Alright guys, that's gonna do it for me today on the Line 6 HX Stomp. Yeah, if you can't tell, I'm having a lot of fun with this thing. If you guys want to pick up one of these, $6.99, I will drop an affiliate link down below to Sweetwater. Even if you don't end up buying one of these or buying anything, guys, do me a favor, hit that Sweetwater affiliate link just in case you might be buying some new gear sometime here in the near future. What did I just say? But yeah, you guys clicking that link, even if you don't buy anything, massively helps. It allows me to work with Sweetwater and bring you videos like this. So I would really appreciate it if you hit that affiliate link, especially if you want to buy one of these, which I know I'm happy to be keeping this. So I think that's gonna do it for me on this one today, guys. I had a lot of fun. Thank you so much for watching. I hope you had fun too. If you did, hit that like button, subscribe if you're not already subscribed, and I'm gonna get out of here. Thanks so much for watching, guys. Kyle here again. We'll see you next time.
You know what this wall is missing? Another amp. There we go.